Hi, Year 3. So today in English, we are going to be focusing on a particular person today. It's somebody that we would refer to as a significant individual. So that's somebody that has made a difference to the world around us in some way. And the person that we're going to concentrate on today as our significant individual is somebody that has contributed a lot to something that we've been looking at in science over the last few weeks. And in particular, last week in science, we were looking at fossils and what that tells us about how the world used to be around us and what sort of animals existed. And this person was quite influential in helping us to understand what those fossils could tell us. So the person that we're going to be finding out today is a lady called Mary Anning. And we're going to do a little bit of research to find out about her in order that we can tomorrow then put a fact file together, some information about her life, about what she did, successes that she had, the discoveries that she made and so on. But obviously, before we can do a fact file, we need to find out a little bit about her. So we are going to find out about her, but also remind ourselves as well a little bit about fossils as well, because some of you might have had a go at doing the science work last week. Some of you might not have been able to. So this will just give us a little reminder, a little introduction, depending on what you've been able to do, as to what fossils actually are. So Mary Anning, as we know, is the person that we're going to be talking about. Okay, so our aim is to explain Mary Anning's contribution to paleontology. Now, some of you might be familiar with that term paleontology, but we're going to come on to talk about it in a moment. So hopefully by the end of this activity, when you finish finding out about Mary Anning, we will know what a paleontologist does, why her findings were so important, and how the work that she's done has helped to influence and change our understanding of animals from many, many, many years ago. So paleontology and paleontologists, so long words there, so key words to learn, and it's broken down for us there on how we actually pronounce the word. So phonetically underneath you can see that it's sounded out for us. So what could a paleontologist be? What could a paleontologist do? Well, we've given you a few little clues in our introduction to this already. So they are people that find out about fossils, about things from the past. So fossils have been found by people throughout history. But it's only in the last 200 years that we've begun to really understand what these fossils are and how they are formed. So some ideas from the past before we've sort of really started to understand what fossils were. Okay, so we ancient Greeks found fossils of marine animals, so sea animals, and we realised that this meant some land used to be underwater. So where they found them was actually on land, but they were finding marine animals there, so they knew that at some point that land must have been underwater. In ancient China, it says we found many fossils of dinosaurs, although these were mistaken for dragon bones, because we know the dragon's a very important animal to Chinese culture. So some people even use them in medicines. So that was what they thought they were, belonged to dragons, and they thought that that's going to have a special power, magical power to them, almost medicinal power, and that would therefore they were used in medicines. So, but the breakthrough came by this gentleman Cuvier here. So it says, believe it or not, in the past, people were not convinced that some animals had become extinct, died out. They didn't think that that had happened. They thought all the animals that were currently alive had always been alive. There were no other animals that had existed beforehand. But Cuvier proved that fossils found were of animals who were similar to animals that were known, like elephants, but which had died out to natural disasters like floods. So that he sort of tried to convince them that these, I the woolly mammoth, which is an animal whose remains have been found throughout the years, that was actually different to the elephant that those people were familiar with at that time then. So this was a really important idea which led to the beginning of paleontology, which is the study of fossils, as it proved the existence of animals that humans did not know about as they died out before our time. So, before we find out a bit more about Mary Anning and about how she fits in with all of this, let's just remind ourselves about different types of fossils. There are lots of different types of fossils that we started looking at last week in science, if you managed to have a little look at that. But if you didn't, this will be a little introduction to you, just to make you aware of all the different types that there are. Okay, so we have got body fossils, we have got trace fossils, and then we have got chemical fossils. Okay, so those are our three main different types of fossils there. Now, if we follow the diagrams down, our body fossils, okay, are the remains of animals or plants. So they could be in the form of a mold fossil. So almost a mold has been made where the animal was, and it's built around it. So when you, for example, we had the snow not so long ago and you put your foot in that, and there was a mold of your footprint there. So it left a mark of where your foot had been. So that was similar to when we're thinking about a mold fossil. Cast fossils, that's when that mould has been filled in with bits of minerals that had taken up that space. Okay, and then we get the cast fossil. So we see the shape of the animal that once would have been there. But we've then got our replacement fossils. So our replacement fossils is where the skeleton of that animal would have been, but over time, many, many, many years over time, all the skeleton gets broken down, washed away. And where that was, where the skeleton was, all the minerals will come in and will fill in and give us that outline of that skeleton that would have been there. So it's replacing it. Okay, so the skeleton has gone, but it's been replaced with the minerals that make up the fossil that is now remaining. So we can see the full shape of what would have been there of the skeleton. And then we have whole body fossils. So that's when an animal has been sort of trapped inside and preserved. And this example we've got here is of a mosquito that's been trapped in some amber. So it's come from a liquid, has come from a tree, and it's got stuck inside there, and it's been preserved inside as a whole body fossil. So those are our body fossils. We then have trace fossils, which show animal activity, so show that there has been some kind of activity going on that's been preserved over years. So it could be a footprint or a trackway. Now, there was something in the news about this the other day that I spotted, where a young girl had found a trace fossil, a footprint of a dinosaur from the past, and it was quite an unusual one that she'd just come across by accident as she was going for a walk along the beach. So we're still coming across these fossils today. They're still there to be discovered. So a trace fossil shows us that an animal has been there. They've left their mark in some way. Okay, one way can be by footprints and trackways. The other way is coprolites, and that is basically the poo of the dinosaur, whatever animal it is that's been left, okay, that then gets preserved and kept, and it's a sign that the animal would have been there. And then we have chemical fossils. So these are like our fuel fossils, fossil fuels rather, that we use today. So these are things that contain carbon. And carbon is proof that something has been alive, and we tend to think this in terms of our oil that we might find, or our coal that we use for fossil fuels. So what we have been looking at as science is more really the body fossils that are left, because those are what we find in our rocks, and it's our sedimentary rocks that we tend to find those in as well, okay? As well as the trace fossils, because those imprints are found within the rocks that are around us today. So we're sort of touching on our science work here, aren't we, with our English, but it's always good just to remind ourselves. But remember, Mary Anning that we're finding out about today. So Who was Mary Anning and what did she find that was so important? So we're going to be watching a video now. Now, again, this PowerPoint is going to be in the OneDrive folder. So if you want to click on and watch any of it again, and just remind yourself of any of the information, because there's going to be quite a lot of information in this video that you will be able to refer to. So while you're watching it, listen really carefully, see what you can find out about her, and then see if you can find out what information about the types of fossils that she found as well. So I'm just going to come out of my PowerPoint at the moment, and I'm going to link us straight to the video because that seems to work a little bit better for us sometimes when we do it that way. So this is Mary. Now, hold on a second. I'm just going to come back out of that and do one more thing in the hope that you are going to be able to hear the video nice and clearly. So always makes it better when you can actually hear what's going on. So.
I'm going to tell you something about my life. My name is Mary Anning. I was born in the year 1799 to a poor family in a small town by the sea. It's difficult to know where to start my story, because the truth is, I was born once, and then, when I was just 15 months old and still a baby, I had my second beginning. My mother had left me in the charge of 3 ladies. They were getting some fresh air when suddenly the sky got dark and a storm cloud came rolling across the sky. As the rain started, they ran to shelter under a tree. Suddenly, a great bolt of lightning leapt from the sky, striking the tree and the ladies with it. All 3 of the poor souls fell to the ground. My father came running. They say I was a dull child before, but that after the lightning strike I was bright, like the lightning itself had gone into me and brought me fully to life. I grew up by the sea. Every day my father would take my brother Joseph and I down to the beach, no matter what the weather. We were looking for these things we called curiosities. They were beautiful things hidden inside the rocks. I didn't know what they were, these curiosities, but somehow I knew that they came from another world. You might know them to be fossils. You might know that they are creatures that lived millions of years ago, turned to stone and waiting to be discovered amongst the rocks. But we didn't know that then. To us, they were just beautiful, mysterious things. I learned how to spot them. I was good at it. A keen eye, my father said. My father taught me how to get the curiosities out of the rock. You had to have such patience. One hit too hard with a hammer and the whole thing could be in pieces. So I learnt to be patient and to find it one tiny chip at a time, to tease it out from where it had been hiding for who knows how long. Because we were poor, once we got the curiosities out of the rock and cleaned them up, me and Joseph would sell them from a stall on the street. People thought they were frozen lightning bolts or the devil's own toenails. We'd sell them for a penny each. One day, a lady came by, said her name was Elizabeth Philpott. She showed such special interest in our fossils and thought we had a fine collection. She seemed to know more about these things than anyone I'd ever met. So when she asked if I'd like to see her fossils, I asked Father and went with her straight away. I'd never seen anything so fine. She had them all lined up like little treasures in a special cabinet. There were things in that cabinet I'd never seen before, things that made my heart beat harder. Then, she gave me some books to borrow. I was so hungry to see what they said. I read about all the new ideas coming from the best men in science. Ideas that were new and strange, that these curiosities were really creatures from another time that had died and been somehow locked up inside the stone, thousands, even millions of years ago. I started to see the fossils differently and imagine them coming to life. It gave me such a thrill to think of it. It was all I wanted to do, to walk on the beach and stare at the stones. It was like an itch or a twitch, just knowing that there were fossils out there waiting to be discovered. But then a terrible thing happened. My father got very ill. He had fallen down the cliffs and just wasn't getting better. I was just 12 years old when my father died. Now, I would have to walk the beach without him. We were more poor now than ever. Selling curiosities was our best chance of making money, so every day I went out to look for them. And besides, the fossils were all I thought about. It was like an itch or a twitch, knowing that there were fossils out there just waiting to be discovered. I grew up and I never stopped looking. I could see the world so clearly now. I knew what the scientists were saying about what they were, these fossils, as they were now called, and I had my own ideas too. It must be hard for you to imagine, but these were such extraordinary ideas. People found it hard to believe that the world could really be millions of years old, and that the curiosities were really creatures that had lived all that time ago. Then, one day I was out hunting, eyes scanning the stones and cliffs as usual, and I saw something that made all the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It weren't much to see, but there was a hint of something sticking out from a large slab of slate. I could have walked past it 1,000 times, but this time it was as if I could see beneath the surface, and I just knew that this was something really big. I'd never left it on my own. I called some quarrymen who knew me well for all the time I spent on the beach to come and help carry the slab back to my workroom. I had to calm myself down. I knew it would take an age and that I had to be patient. I started to chip away at the great slab. Just like my father had taught me, I had to work one tiny chip at a time. Hurry, and I could ruin it. One tiny chip at a time, I waited to see what would emerge from the rock. One tiny chip at a time, I couldn't stop. I couldn't think of anything else. As it slowly emerged, I knew this was different from anything I'd found before. It took days, weeks, one tiny chip at a time. Finally, I stood back and looked at what it was that I had found. It was the skull of some great creature, a creature like nothing alive. I ran to fetch Elizabeth. She came with an important man of science all the way from London. He said it were like nothing he'd ever seen, and that he'd never seen a creature with such an enormous eye. He said it was important. He said that all of science would be amazed. Imagine that. They called it an Ichthyosaur, after the Greek words for fish lizard. To my astonishment, he gave me £25 for it. For the first time in my life, my family would have no need to worry about money. My Ichthyosaur was just the beginning. I never stopped looking. I found more things the world had never seen. They took my fossils up to London, put them on display in the British Museum. My finds would change the whole way the world was understood. But they never once said who had found them. The men of science wrote their books and forgot all about me. Now, though, almost 200 years later, they say I was the greatest fossil hunter ever. How about that? My father would have been so proud. I found many incredible things, but just think, for every fossil I found, how many more may lie undiscovered right beneath your feet?
Okay, so there's something to think about at the end there, all those fossils that are still left to be discovered. But Mary Anning was very influential in being able to share what she had found, and what her findings did was help shape what we know about fossils today and our understanding of them. So we had a really good overview of her life then, not just about her work with fossils, but right back to her childhood and how her love of fossils developed over the years. And she did have a very tricky childhood. It was, they were quite a poor family, and something that, was quite challenging for them as a family to go through with loss of her father, and all the work that she had to do to try and support the family as well. So we've watched the video. So we need, hopefully, to think now and consider about what we've learned about Mary Anning, about her childhood, about her growing up, about the people that she met, how they helped her, the types of fossils that she found, how she actually learned about fossils, how did she find out about them, and why her finds were so important. And an interesting one that she sort of touched upon in the video there about why she thought that she wasn't credited with finding the fossils, because she said the men of science forgot to include her in their books that they wrote. And it was almost as if she didn't really exist at that time. And that's something for us maybe to consider and think about why that might have been at that particular time, something that you can find out a little bit more about when you're researching, okay? So in Mary Anning's lifetime, paleontology was still a very new field of ideas and theories. So we're still making lots of discoveries about it. We still weren't really sure about all the ideas behind it. So the fossils Mary Anning found were important for a number of reasons. So her major finds, and there were many of them, but her major ones included the first Ichthyosaur skull and then a whole skeleton. So a complete Plesiosaur skeleton and a partial skeleton of a Petrosaur. So those were her most significant finds that she had. And the fossils provided evidence for the ideas of the early paleontologists, so the first paleontologists that were really developing this area of study. So many scientists visited Mary Anning, and she was able to help them understand more about the fossils she had found. So she shared her understanding with them. She discovered bezoar stones in the abdominal area of the Ichthyosaur, and these contained fish bones. So she discussed her findings with William Buckland, who was a geologist and a paleontologist, who identified them as species and named them coprolites, which is now a type of trace fossil. So remember, that was the poo that we were talking about earlier on, fossilized poo. So the area which she collected her fossils is now known as the Jurassic Coast, due to the large number of prehistoric sea creatures that are found in that area. So you can see on the map there whereabouts it is in the UK, and some of you may well have visited that part of the country on holiday, because it's a beautiful coastline, not just beautiful in terms of scenery, but in the discoveries that you can make as well. So she didn't chance upon the fossils. She realised that they were found at the Blue Lias Cliffs, and these cliffs are made from layers of shale and limestone, which formed over 200 million years ago. So the fact that she grew up there, if she'd have grown up somewhere else, she wouldn't have made those discoveries, but that particular area and the type of rock that is there meant that those animals from all those years ago have their fossils have been preserved within that stone, within that sedimentary stone in that area. So she also knew to search after a storm, because that storm would erode the rocks and break them down. So this made it easier to hunt for fossils as they became more exposed. In addition, she knew that she would have to search soon after the storm so that the smaller fossils were not washed away to sea. So she had to time it just right. As it says at the bottom there, she most definitely was an expert fossil hunter. She knew the tricks of the trade. She knew how what the best thing to do was to be able to find these fossils. So we have, through hopefully that PowerPoint and that video, found out some information there, quite a lot of information about Mary Anning. But you now need to go and put all that together, pull it all together and make sense of it all, okay, and try and organise it. So in today's folder, there are a couple of things for you to hopefully help you to be able to find that information and organise it. So there is a sheet that has got some website links on there. So as well as the PowerPoints in the folder, these website links here will take you to some other websites which give you information about Mary Anning. So some of which you will have come across in that video, but you might find out some extra facts about her work and the discoveries that she made. So that is something, if you have a chance, to have a little look at as well. And with all this information, because you've probably got a lot of information now going on in your head, we've got to try and, as I said before, make sense of it and record it all down. So you are going to use this recording sheet here to help you to set out and organise what you found down. So we can see we've got Mary Anning in the centre there, and then around the outside we've got different boxes which sort of help us to organise as well the main parts, the main elements that we need to be finding out about Mary Anning. So there's a section here to do with the family, her home, so where she grew up, her childhood, so what her childhood was like, what she did, how and what did she learn about fossils? So how did she find out about fossils, and what did she find out about them? Because if you remember, she talked about them, people at the time thought about them as being curiosities, but she actually understood that they weren't just curiosities, but they were actually able to tell us a lot about what life was like in the past. So think back to what we could find out about in terms of that. The discoveries that she made, so those different fossils that she found out, what did she find out, which were her greatest finds? And then why is she seen as an important person, and why did she not become famous when she was alive? So why do you think that she wasn't referred to in the history book, the science book, sorry, at the time? So this sheet here is going to be for you to record all your ideas down on. And as with most planning grids that we do in English, we've talked before about the best way to record down and to make it nice and clear is to bullet point our facts that we find. All right, so in those boxes there, you're going to bullet point all the different ideas and the information that you can find, so that when we come tomorrow to write our fact file up properly and neatly, and we'll look more at that tomorrow, you can use what you have found today to be able to help you to do that. So think about setting it out clearly. If you run out of room on one of your boxes, you could always turn onto the back of the sheet that you printed off, or you could do it in a separate book if you've got somewhere to write your notes down there. So you will have a lot of information. So make sure that as best you can, you record it down so that we can then use that tomorrow. I'm going to let you now go away, go back over the video, watch it again if you want to make some notes on your research sheet, to go and look at those websites. And then tomorrow I'm going to meet up with you again, and then we're going to talk about what we're going to do with that research sheet that you have filled out. So have a good day. Enjoy finding out about Mary Anning and the discoveries that she made. And we shall see you tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.